Hembo and his Eagles when he guaranteed us a Super Bowl championship. I bet my kids' college fund on the Super Bowl champions, and now my kids are going to have to go to community college because I can't afford college because the Kansas City Chiefs.
I got to weigh in on this because I did the research on the NL West a couple weeks ago, and I don't think the Padres are honestly even all that close to slaying the dragon. I'll tell you why. So look,
wait. You didn't hear the interview we just did you?
No, I just heard your reaction to it.
Okay, so let me just tell you what happened. So we had Jesse Agler's a great play-by-play guy. He used to be with the Dolphins. Now he's with the Padres. Good friend of our buddy Roxy Bernstein. He does a tremendous job. And I was asking him about, well, the Dodgers have owned the division. You took them down in the postseason, but you still haven't slayed the dragon. And he went, no, we've slayed the dragon. They have the feeling in San Diego because they won that playoff against the Dodgers that all the past history is gone. They've slayed the dragon. And I joked, and I said, I can't believe now we're making out the Dodgers to be the team with the chip on their shoulder. Go ahead. You tell me. Because in San Diego, they're guaranteeing more money to players than anyone has ever guaranteed in the history of the game. They are truly all in.
They're all in as all in can be. And I want to make clear because Padres fans have gotten on me in the past about my assessment of their place in the baseball universe. So I want to make sure I'm crystal clear with what I say. The Padres spending money hand over fist is, holistically at least, a fundamentally great thing for the game of baseball because the fans win, and in this case, the other owners lose. Generally speaking, that's a proposition that has almost always favored the game historically. It's a good thing to see the number 30 media market in the country do this. I'm all for it. That being said, the Padres are not going to win the National League West this year, and the Dodgers are going to once again, and they're going to do so by at least 10 games. 10! The Dodgers are still considerably better than the San Diego Padres. Anything can happen in the playoffs, and that was evidenced last year in the playoffs, right? Like that's a whole different – like the tournament is one thing. I'm talking about 162 games right here, okay? Look at their run differentials last year. I don't have the standings in front of me. But last year, the Dodgers were 290 runs better than the Padres were. You don't make up – that's not an exaggeration. It is a statement of fact. You don't make up 290 runs by assembling a constellation of a few stars. For all of the stars, for all the star power, and for all the celebrity, and for all the win probability swings that Juan Soto and Fernando Tatis and Xander Bogaerts and Manny Machado are going to provide, the Dodgers, over 162, are more than going to make up for with their ruthless process and player development. The Dodgers have something like half a dozen top 100 prospects that are going to cheaply contribute to the big league club this year. The Padres don't have any of those guys. The Padres have already emptied the clip. The Dodgers have many bullets left in their chamber, and they're coming from a position of strength, having destroyed this division last year during the regular season. Historically great. Now, again, the playoffs are a different animal, and the Padres are uniquely equipped to win playoff series because of that constellation of stars that they have assembled, and that does often win playoff series. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. The Dodgers are going to win the National League West this year, and they're going to do so by at least 10 games again.
That's what I love about you. By the way, what was your degree in?
I did my undergrad in communication, and I have a worthless master's degree in education, believe it or not. Fun fact about me.
I mean, you know what I think about all the time, Hembo? If you and I would have got on Wall Street and we would have got into hedge funds with all the stuff that we think about with sports and everything, we could be Steve Cohen. We could be rich. Instead, we're sitting here talking about dumb stuff like, hey, wait, is this guy going to DH or is he going to play first? And oh my God, what's his WOBA? I mean, we could be rich, living out in the Hamptons. I could be a member at like any country club. I'd be a member at Augusta. I'd be a member at Wingfoot, Baltusrol there in the Northeast. Instead, we're doing this.
I mean, we could be rich. We could also be dead. And I'm not sure which is more likely. Probably the latter. I mean, right now, I mean, if you're watching Ace Cast Live right now, it looks like I'm in a hostage video. I'm in my basement because at this present time, there are so many things happening upstairs. I have 6-month-old twin girls that are screaming their faces off. I have an incredibly annoying dog parenthetically named after Chase Utley, barking at everything going by us in the street. There are 3 guys upstairs replacing windows and doors in our house. So what I had to come down to is work out as quickly as I could and then talk ball with you. So, like, to say that Steve Cohen has it better than I do is obviously the understatement of the century. I'm lucky to get half an hour to talk shop with you. Like, this is the best. This is the most fun I'll have this week. If we're going to talk about life choices, that says everything you need to know about where I've arrived at this point.
We're not there yet, but I do think it's fascinating. I can't wait to watch is this NL East. I mean, it's going to be, the Mets had control of it. Then they lost control at the end. Here came the Braves. And then it was like the whole time sit back, like it's like the guy in the corner smoking a cigarette, having a beer, watching two guys fight and went, now it's my turn. Here comes the fighting Phils, and they end up in the World Series. I mean, it was a lot of fun to watch, and I'm hoping we have that kind of drama because can you truly make a case for all 3 of the Mets, the Braves, and your fighting Phils to represent the National League in the World Series again?
Yes. Definitively, yes. The Braves last year won 100 games. The Mets last year won 100 games. The Phillies last year reached the World Series. And on paper, all 3 of those teams got better. All of them. The Braves are absolutely stacked. I think the Braves roster is ridiculously underrated, to be honest with you, because so many of those guys are young and cheap. What they've done there is built a player development behemoth that is sustainable, on which you can add and on which you can expect players to continue to improve, because baseball is a young man's game. What the Mets have done is spent money hand over fist, I think a little bit more responsibly than San Diego has. They're going to have a ridiculous starting rotation, which is going to play up in the playoffs. They're going to score enough runs, and they're going to approach, if not exceed, 100 wins once again. Buck Showalter gets as much as, if not more than, out of his teams than any manager in the sport, and we know that. Last year, the Phillies played at a 90-plus win pace once Rob Thompson became their manager. And given the new rules, Trey Turner is as good a bet to win MVP of the National League as anybody in the sport. Right now, that kid's in his prime. He has every skill under the sun. And if we're going to sit here and say that all these rules changes are going to benefit the best athletes in baseball, who's a better athlete than that guy? I could see him stealing 50 bags. I could see him hitting 30 bombs in that hitter-friendly ballpark the first time he's ever played in his career, playing at least league average defense at shortstop with a bunch of boppers sitting behind him in the lineup. Like, he could go 100 runs, 100 ribbies with a bunch of other stuff, get you 6 or 7 WAR, and be in as good a shape as anybody to win that award. And by the way, Bryce Harper comes back at the All-Star break, and he's in a bang. So these teams are incredibly exciting to follow. The 3 of them will combine to win something like 290 plus games. That's how good those 3 teams are. They should all make the playoffs once again. And obviously, we saw last year in the tournament, anything's possible given the fact that it was San Diego and Philly at the end against all odds.
I mean, you talk about a year where, you say 100 RBIs, you say 100 runs scored, you say 30 bombs, you go, okay. But then you throw 50-plus stolen bases on that? Wow.
I got numbers, okay? I got numbers. So I just did this research earlier this week for Buster Only to sort of take inventory of spring training. So right now, the success rate on stolen bases in spring training is 83%. All right? That's on –
Write that down, Cody.
Write that down, Cody. On 2.3 attempts per game. Over the previous 4 years, that's the sample size that I use just to get recent precedent. Over the previous 4 years, in spring training again, so we're comparing apples to apples, the percentage was 73, and the attempts were 1.7 per game. So this is what's happened. Attempts have increased by 35%. The success rate has increased by 10 percentage points. Why is that so incredibly important? Because the number 75 is the most important number in base running. 75 is the break-even point for stealing bases. Is it worth it to steal a base? The answer to that question is yes, if you can exceed 75%. It's no if you can't, just on balance. There are obviously, there's more nuance to it than that. But as a general rule, that's a good indicator of whether or not it's worth me taking off. Trey Turner is one of the very fastest players in baseball. And if Trey Turner wants to go 50 times this year, he's going to steal 40, 42, or 44 bags. It just depends on how much he wants to run. I don't know that you're going to see the kind of increase in stolen bases league-wide that we might necessarily expect. Like most things, we'll see we'll see things most pronounced on the extremes. The Trey Turners of the world, the Bobby Witts of the world, the fastest players in baseball. If their break-even point is going to be 75% plus, you're going to see them run twice as much, or at least you should, because that's what the math says. And if you're a pitcher that's slow to the plate, if you're 1-4, if you're 1-5, if you're 1-6 out of the stretch, what's going to happen is that if I'm a manager of a club that has some speedsters, I'm going to run you ragged because that's the best way to be able to play station to station now, unless I got a bunch of 3-run homer boppers type in my lineup. The Phillies, in this case, can do both. And so I think what you'll see with the new rules, most of it is manifest on the extremes. The pitchers that are especially slow and the base runners that are especially fast. But keep that number in mind. 75. Right now, that number is 83% in spring training. And what all the geeks are going to say, because look, these are my people, right? What they're going to say is, if you can exceed 75%, anyone on your team, you should go twice as often as you were before.
And wouldn't this be the way, kind of like what we saw with the Diamondbacks last year? The Diamondbacks had the most stolen bases after the All-Star break. They stole at a clip of 83-point-something% and really changed how they played. And look at the success. I mean, wouldn't this be the way if you're going to compete and not have a bunch of boppers? Isn't this the way to now win baseball games? Run.
Yes. And the thing about that is that it works both ways. So generally speaking, and this is a larger research study for which you could write endlessly, but if we're talking about the Bobby Witts and Trey Turners and Corbin Carrolls of the world, like just to use some examples of guys that we know can really, really go. Generally speaking, those guys can also play defense. There's a lot of overlapping skill there. And so what you're going to have the opportunity to do now is almost make a binary choice. Do I want a bunch of slow boppers who can't really catch the ball in my lineup? Or do I want a bunch of fast kids that can, should they reach base, run and steal runs and manufacture runs while also preventing runs on defense? What you might find now is while the win probability that you might add by hitting home runs is obviously the best or most efficient way to score runs, what you might find is if you can't fill your lineup with 530 home run guys, younger, cheaper players generally have that kind of athleticism with which to draw from. Younger, cheaper players are going to be easier to find that can do those things. And so the bottom line here is, how many runs am I going to score minus how many runs am I going to allow, or vice versa, right? The differential between the two is what matters. It doesn't really matter that much how you get there. I happen to really like the idea of run scoring variance, about lineup diversity, about the ability to have guys on my team that can play both ways and add stuff on both sides of the ledger. And if we're going to continue to sort of live in a world in which we're going to build our lineups around guys that hit 3-run home runs, well, I think over the course of time, what you might find is that's a little bit less efficient than it used to be. And we've always had suspicions about how well that works in the playoffs.
I'm hearing about the craziest stat of the week. The craziest.
Are you ready?
Okay. All right, everybody, go.
So I am the world's biggest Juan Soto fan, the president of the fan club. And that's because it is my steadfast belief that the most important number on the back of one's baseball card is his on-base percentage. And because that answers the fundamental question, how often do you make an out, right? And that's the best way to determine the answer to that question. And in the case of Juan Soto, he makes it out less frequently than almost any hitter that has ever lived. He's a precocious young hitter that we know. All that being said, this stat blew me away considering all that this kid's accomplished. He was the best player on a World Series champion. He's won the Derby. He's got a batting title. He's got 2 on-base titles. He's a freaking stud. So Juan Soto has, I'm rounding up here by a few plate appearances, about 2,900 plate appearances in his career. That includes the playoffs. I put them all together. About 2,900 career plate appearances. And you, my friend, are going to guess the following. You are going to guess the number of plate appearances out of 2,900 in Juan Soto's career in which he faced a pitcher that was younger than he is.
In 2,900? He's what, 22 now or 23?
No, he's 20. He's going to play this year at 24.
Oh, God, it's got to be so small because he came up at what, 19?
19.
So he had to find. So when he was 19, the pitcher had to be 18.
Correct.
Right.
Pitcher just had to be a day younger than him from the day he entered the big leagues. I'm talking about 2,900 plate appearances.
I'm gonna go 0.
You're way closer than anyone else has been. The answer to that question is really close to 0. It is 13. Juan Soto has faced, in the whole scope of his career, a grand total
Wow.
Has recorded 13 plate appearances, 0.5%.
Let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
How many of that was last year?
There were 9 of them last year.
Exactly.
And there were
So my zero's not that crazy.
and there were 4 in 2020. Last year, I know one of the pitchers was Spencer Strider, who is a tick younger than Juan Soto is. But like when you think about what that kid's already accomplished,
Now you're
like
just dealing in birthdays.
dude,
Yeah.
one of the best ways to evaluate how good a minor league hitter is to evaluate their performance against older pitchers. It's what scouts have done since the beginning of time. We now track that very easily. It's on everyone's splits page on Baseball Reference. Like for example, Jordan Walker, that stud from St. Louis, mashed last year in Double-A and was younger than every single pitcher that he faced. But we're talking about Juan Soto doing that over 5 years in the big leagues. I mean, this is an absolute freak of nature who I think it is sometimes easy to take for granted. I don't think the Padres are anywhere near the best team in the National League West, but add him to that list with Trey Turner as guys who I could easily and obviously see winning MVP of the National League. 13 in 5 years.
That's unreal. And what? I bet the majority of those 13 are relievers.
Yeah, most of those relievers too. There's like a list of 6 or 7 guys. I don't have the list in front of me. Most of them are fairly anonymous. Spencer Strider is the least anonymous among them.
Yeah. I mean that's wow.
I sold it and I delivered. That makes me happy.
Yes, that is that. It would be interesting too. Like Ted Williams came up really early. It'd be interesting to see because if they try and do you're never going to compare the slug. You're never going to compare the power, the doubles. It's just the average. You're never going to compare that with Ted Williams. That's why I hate. It's not fair to Soto to me to compare him to Ted Williams. I went round and round with Mike Petriello about this. I'm like, Ted Williams, I mean, go look at, if you don't want to talk about the average, because you're trying to say average, go look, doubles still matter, home runs still matter. He'll never get to those kind of numbers. And Williams missed 4 years of his career because of WAR.
I want to make clear. It requires a pretty significant degree of historical ignorance to compare literally anybody to Ted Williams. Yeah. And I mean, I say that kindly. Like Ted Williams always said that it was his objective to walk down the street and for you to say, there goes the greatest hitter that ever lived. And he lived up to that objective. You could make an argument that because of his slug, Babe Ruth is actually that player. Ted Williams is certainly that player since Babe Ruth. But Ted Williams did things in a batter's box that will never be done again. If you want to say that Juan Soto is the closest thing we have right now in the game to Ted Williams, okay. But we could be playing baseball for another 1,000 years. And there's a real chance that no one will do what Ted Williams did over the course of his career. And no, I'm not going to count an inflated Barry Bonds from 2001 to 2004.
We've been talking about, because, this whole thing going on with the PGA Tour right now and the changes that are happening with the tour and their Netflix series is huge. Formula One's Netflix series is huge. Hard Knocks has been such a huge success. And we've been trying to sell all this cutesy stuff in baseball. It's the Players Weekend and everybody's nickname. We need to start giving people what they want. We know the public wants the core. They want the inside of the inside. And one of the things that I know you brought up for us, you want to talk about the year of Ohtani. Whether you had a film crew who was around the Padres this year would be fascinating. The Giants would have been fascinating with trying to get Judge and then Correa and all the way it screwed up. But following around Ohtani this year, a Netflix thing would be fascinating.
Shohei Ohtani is a Netflix series away from being the most popular athlete in the world. There is nothing not to like and everything to be attracted to. I mean, not only is he like literally a singular talent, and I think we'll reach a point here soon where comparing him to Babe Ruth will be shortchanging Ohtani's two-way ability, to be totally candid with you. I mean, Ohtani will never be the hitter that Babe Ruth was, but he's already reached a point now where he's two-weighing better than Babe Ruth ever did, and there's no obvious reason to believe that's going to stop anytime soon. But he's also everything that's good for the game of baseball and its potential growth. Obviously, given his background, where he's from, he's a global phenomenon. He's a great ambassador for the sport. He's a perfect face of the sport. And baseball has the ability that very few other sports do to actually flex itself as a truly global game. Like, there aren't many sports that can lead into that the way that baseball can. And I'm not sure we do it as well as we should. The reason this is the year of Ohtani is obvious. He's a free agent at the end of the season. He's starting with the World Baseball Classic. Mickey Mantle is his freaking teammate playing center field and Mike Trout. and he's someone we've hardly gotten to know at all. And the free agent pursuit of Shohei Ohtani and a potential trade that could come before the deadline is the most interesting thing in baseball this year. Like, we thought we had a good last year when Aaron Judge tracked down Roger Maris and hit 62 bombs, obviously. This is that on steroids when you think of the big picture, when you zoom out. So I'm with you. Any opportunity that Major League Baseball eschews not to attract attention to Shohei Ohtani is a minute wasted. As far as I'm concerned, that guy is a once-in-a-generation specimen that we absolutely have to take advantage of. And I, for the life of me, am desperate to see him play in the postseason. Like, Shohei, October needs to be his new last name. And so even if that means the Dodgers get him or the Mets get him or someone get him whom I don't necessarily love, like, as a fan of baseball, as someone who lives and dies and breathes the game, Shohei October has to be a thing. And as far as that's concerned, I hope this is the last year that he spends in Anaheim, because there is no obvious reason to believe that's going to happen anytime soon over there.
Yeah, as an A's fan, get him out of the division. I have no problem with that. Shohei, when I think about Shohei Ohtani, and I know I'll maybe the only guy that ever says this to you, I think of one of those older ladies sitting in a casino in Vegas, or you can say there in Atlantic City, smoking a cigarette, drinking a gin and tonic, just hammering that slot machine, and it just keeps delivering. Shohei Ohtani, to me, I know we talk about all the to me, he's a human ATM. It just, money is funneling out of him to your organization. The amount of money that he is worth to you in advertising and merchandise. When I see Shohei Ohtani, I see a bank. I don't even see a baseball player. I just see dollar signs. I mean, wherever he goes, he is worth so much more. I mean, we geek out about the numbers, but the numbers that really matter, how you can monetize him. You can monetize him till the cows come home. It's amazing how much he's worth.
Shohei Ohtani is the foundation on which you build an empire. And I am dying to see which team winds up attracting him, because that's going to be the epicenter of the baseball universe for as long as he is in his prime. Not in addition to the enormous quantitative value that his on-field play will provide, which is obvious and we all can, to varying degrees, quantify and marvel in. What you said about the Netflix series and the kind of marketing or advertising that could come around such a thing, and the global appeal and the impact across the country and across the world is such that he could do hardly nothing for my team and I could still turn a profit. The salary that you'll be paying Shohei Ohtani, honestly, is cents on the dollar if you have an infrastructure in place that knows how to market him. And I would imagine that there are well-paid professional people in New York and Los Angeles and everywhere in between that have already begun working earnestly into creating that pitch. There are people who are being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars right now to create one PowerPoint presentation for November 15th of next year. Those are the most important people in baseball right now when you truly think about it. And I'm dying to see what he prioritizes. I'm obviously dying to see the dollar amounts, but we're talking about the kind of player for whom you might have to consider offering ownership stake, for which, like, a no trade clause is going to feel like a prerequisite or a given. But you're going to have to make concessions to a player based upon all that he can provide that we've never seen before. And you're going to see someone shrewd like Andrew Friedman, who's like, doing dollars and cents with all of his other, minor leaguers and stuff, say, to heck with it. I will literally give you whatever my owner says I'm allowed to give you. Sign on the dotted line.
It reminds me of the first Batman when they went to Jack Nicholson and they said, Jack, we're not going to only offer you this incredible salary to play the Joker. We're going to give you points on how the movie, so X amount of millions, you make millions. And Jack Nicholson cashed in like no actor before. I mean, probably since people have done the deal. But I think at that point, he made more money off one movie than anybody had ever made off a movie before. That's the kind of deal you're looking at. Before we get out of here, how is the book doing? How are you guys doing with it?
The book is doing fantastic. So Greeny and I, over the last couple of years, as you and your audience knows, wrote a book. It's called Got Your Number. There's 100 chapters, 1 through 100. We decided who in sports owns each one. I helped him with the research. He wove those numbers together and wrote these ridiculously good essays. And for the first time ever, I held the book in my hand today. So our friends from the publishing company came down to our studios here in New York. They gave us a copy. We took pictures. We recorded videos. Honestly, like, it's as proud of anything as I could possibly be. I mean, aside from the birth of my children, obviously, but like the work that goes into it and the pride with which I take in the work that we did, like, I could truly say this. I mean, we're going to sell a lot of books, but if I sold 5 books, the idea of having to be able to hold that thing
Yeah.
for which I have like this kind of emotional attachment is really not something that I've ever had in my life before, or could have even foreseen or ever expected. So if you're a sports fan and you're into my numbers or into my work or have listened to Greeny over the years, I'm certain that you'll like it. It's called Got Your Number, and you can buy it anywhere that they sell books. And I appreciate you giving me the chance to plug it here because you've been a friend for many, many years, and it goes a long, long way.
Well, I mean, the fact that, your kids and then your grandkids, that doesn't go away. That book will always be around and they'll always be able to remember you by that book. I just think years from now where your grandkids I mean, you're going to do multiple books. We can still, at some point we know you're going to come out with the Hall of Fame book, but the fact that your grandkids will be able to, my grandfather worked for ESPN. He's a big deal, wrote this book. That means something, man.
There's something about the brick and mortar. There's something about like the meat and potatoes of it, right? Like to be able to hold something in your hand is something for which we definitely take for granted now. Like I don't know anyone that still gets a newspaper, but like the idea, like we all grew up reading books,
Yeah.
and you and I probably more than most grew up devouring these record books, right? Like these I poured through these books with lists and stats, and I have these numbers emblazoned into my memory from the time I was 10 years old. And the idea of having like the idea of some kid doing the same because of some work that I've done is just incredible. It's crazy. And yeah, and I appreciate the opportunity, the platform. I'm exceedingly proud of it, and we'll see if I can use it as momentum for the next project that we can announce hopefully soon.
Yeah, I still have the baseball encyclopedia. If everybody remembers that, that's where you used to go for all your career numbers because we didn't have the internet. Yeah,
You're so old.
Yes, I know, it's unbelievable. And then when will you put out that Hall of Fame book?
That is still TBD. It is in the process of being written and pitched to people that matter. It is in the process, I would say, down the home stretch here. So my hope is that at some point in the next few months when we talk, I'll have a big fun announcement for you. And I don't actually know how, like now that I'm sort of clear from the first project here, just kind of see how the whole process went. The most important thing to me is that I do the research well and write it well. And at this point, I think we're still probably years away from getting that in our hands. But I do think that we have built a lot of momentum here, and I've learned a lot from this process. So you'll be the first to know, that I can assure you.
You're just waiting for Chase Utley to get into the Baseball Hall of Fame. I know you. I know you're just waiting for Utley to. I think there's a good chance he will get in. That's when you want to bring the book out, when your hero gets in.
Chase Utley. I'll put it this way. I am going to be the reason Chase Utley is in the Hall of Fame someday. All right. That there has never been a person more synonymous with a player's Hall of Fame candidacy than there will be with me with Chase Utley. That is a hill I will die on. I will actually die on that hill. And I'm not sure I'll have to, because I think by the time he's eligible, I think the electorate will have gotten smart enough to realize that those advanced numbers that he produced are very meaningful. But if they don't think so, then I will have to take 10 years to convince them otherwise.
Well, just the good news. You mentioned Mickey Mantle and Mike Trout. The good thing, Trout can go to playoff games when he goes to the Eagles games. That's always
and the WBC, hopefully so.
Fun time. All right. Hey, give the book one more time. One more plug.
It's called Got Your Number. Mike Greenberg wrote it. I assisted him with the research. You can find it on either of our Twitter pages, at Paul Hembo or at ESPN Greeny. It's called Got Your Number. And if you're a baseball fan, obviously you're listening to this show, or if you're a fan of sports in general, I am 100% certain you'll enjoy it, and even more certain that you'll learn a lot when you read it.
I am going to buy not one. I'm going to buy 2 copies today, one for me and one for the big guy next to me. So the next time that we have you on the program, we will have read the book.
That's exceedingly kind of you. And I hope that you can only provide, at that point, real objections to the numbers that we chose. So that's the whole point, is that it engenders debate. Let's have some fun debates.
Well, we always appreciate the time. You mean so much to this program. And as I always say, you can now go back to LeBron James in the NBA.
Later, bud.
See ya. The great Paul Hembekides from ESPN.